We often look down on ports, thinking them inferior to the original game, especially when one of those ports is on mobile, but that's a stigma to be discussed elsewhere. The thing is, there isn't much about the Switch's version of Grid Autosport that didn't impress me. I worried it would be almost unplayable without analog triggers to accelerate and brake incrementally, and although it isn't perfect with simple shoulder buttons, after a brief adjustment period I rarely noticed a difference. Another control method that's exclusive to Feral Interactive's version of the game, not just the Switch version, is gyroscopic steering. As long as you're playing with a controller capable of gyro controls or in handheld, you have the option of enabling the ability to turn by tilting your controller. Honestly, I've almost always struggled with tilt controls, and that's not much different here, but when playing docked it works really quite well. You're not relying on the slightly too sensitive Switch analog sticks allowing you to be more precise in your steering, as long as you have steady hands obviously. On the flip side, using these controls in handheld isn't nearly as precise or responsive. Tilting the console seems to require either too much or too little movement for the cars to respond properly, resulting in some hilariously or frustratingly slidey races, and crashing, a lot of that. The great thing is, there are so many different control schemes in this version of the game that it's unlikely you won't find one that suits you. The customization even extends to the presentation of the game itself, with 3 modes available depending on your mood, situation or preference. The one I used most was Performance Mode, which pairs back post-processing effects like bloom and various lighting effects in favour of a smoother frame rate. It sticks mostly around the 60 FPS mark, although it occasionally dips a little, and the visuals are about on par with the Xbox 360 version. If you're not too fussed about frame rate, you can prioritise graphics, bringing back those fancy visual effects at the expense of half those frames per second. This mode hits somewhere in the area of 30 FPS, but can drop a bit on rare occasions, although never to the point of being unplayable thankfully. And this is all without the optional texture pack, which wasn't available during the review period but will be by now. The final mode aims at extended handheld playtime, reducing the visuals and frame rate in order to use up less battery. This is a really nice touch, especially with the Switch Lite being right around the corner. In graphics mode it looks better than it did on 360, even in performance mode it looks sharper and you get the added bonus of a smoother frame rate. Gameplay wise it's essentially identical to the Grid Autosport that you may already know, even without the analog triggers. I did have to turn the ABS to stop my brakes locking up, something you can negate with other control methods, and it took a few races for me to get used to accelerating a little bit differently, but then I was happily racing around Spa, Brands Hatch and Yas Marina in touring cars, open-wheeled formula cars and endurance beasts. I was driving around the streets of Dubai and Washington in extremely tuned street machines, and it felt good. There are so many game modes on offer in Grid Autosport, including the added drag mode and all the extra classic championships etc. that were added through DLC in the original release. You can choose any of these race modes in Quick Race, or you can create your own custom cup, visit the aforementioned extra championships or jump right into Career for the ultimate test. Career is likely where you'll spend most of your time in Grid Autosport, working your way up through the ranks over various disciplines. You can focus on whatever you want, choosing whichever discipline you fancy for each session, or you can stick to the ones you like most. You'll eventually want to try out each one though, so you can unlock the overall Grid championships at each level, working your way up to the highest tiers and the biggest challenges. Once you've chosen your current season's discipline from touring, endurance, open wheel, tuner and street, you'll pick a team to race for based on the offers available and jump right into the racing. Autosport feels visceral and frenetic like an arcade game, while retaining the semi-realism for which the Grid games are known. Handling is smooth where it should be, twitchy where it needs to be, and really feels like you'd imagine it does racing these extreme machines at such high speeds. It's unpredictable. Your AI opponent's not always sportsmanlike as you trade paint around the streets of San Francisco, maybe even crashing out in spectacular fashion. If you do the same thing, you'll be grateful for the series' trademark rewind function, turning back the clock a short while to have another crack at avoiding a very crashy fate. This also helped me as I retrained my brain to get used to the new control scheme, which was nice. The Switch has been crying out for a more realistic racer, and Feral Interactive has delivered it in spades with Grid Autosport. It sets the benchmark for racers of this type on Nintendo's console, even managing to outdo the original version despite the controller limitations. It offers customization in terms of several control setups, and its range of performance modes is implemented extremely well. Quite simply, Grid Autosport is one of the best races on Nintendo Switch, and hopefully will be the green light for more realistic racers to hit the console.